What's up, you guys? I'm back again with another video, and I just posted a video the other day talking about some of the classes that were in fact overperforming on the arena ladder. They were performing very well in the arena tournament scene, and we are seeing some nerfs that are going to be released by the time you're watching this video. So tomorrow, or the day this video gets released, there are some class changes and nerfs in PvP, and we'll get right into that in this video. Alright everyone, this post was just posted on MMO Champion several minutes ago, and there are a lot of class changes here. A lot of the changes that I was talking about or things that needed to be changed regarding several classes. I know a lot of people were very upset about the things that I mentioned in the video, but you know, statistics speak for themselves. In fact, let's hop over to the arena statistics to kind of talk about where we're currently at inside of the arena meta. So before we hop into the actual nerfs themselves, let's look at the current arena meta and what classes are in fact performing well. I know I put that video out the other day, and a lot of people, or a small majority of people, were very upset that I mentioned their class. And to be honest, you guys, I don't hate any classes. I play with all classes. I in fact play with an enhanced shaman right now. And you know, I just am phrasing or stating what classes are overperforming and what they need to change to make the game a more balanced, you know, just game overall. People want to have fun, people want to be able to play arena, and it's not fair when some classes are overperforming and some classes are getting left out. So in that video, I stated that assassination rogues were my #1 pick, and you can see here right now we are looking at any region, the 3v3 bracket, and any faction. So this is just global wide, and this is above 2400. So you know, to get a good estimate of what classes are performing well in the upper brackets, that's generally what will, you know, give you a sense of what classes are technically doing the best. So this is in the gladiator bracket where I play on my healer, and this is the classes that I do see. So the #1 spec, I mentioned assassination rogues. There's a reason why I put them at #1. They are performing probably the best out of all melee DPS because they pair up very well with frost mages. And I didn't include mages on my tier list just because I always talk about mages and everyone knows mages are very strong, and I want the list to be unique and fun. I also mentioned enhancement shamans, and a lot of people were very surprised about that, and I think that has a lot to do with just where you're playing at in the arena meta. If you're not following the arena tournaments, you might not know how well enhancement shamans were performing, and you might not know what classes in general are performing well. But yes, enhancement shaman was the second highest ranked melee DPS and the third highest ranked DPS overall. Of course, frost mages are always going to be high with rogues, because rogues and frost mages and either discipline priests or holy paladins or R druids or any other healer for that matter are going to be paired well. If rogues are doing well, essentially mages will probably be doing well as well. So enhancement shamans are still at the top here, and that's why I phrased them there. I'm not just making things up, it's just statistically this is what we see. And if you go down here, I put shadow priests down there, and I mentioned in the video that shadow priests, I don't think they're overpowered. They're just a class, you know, that I think is a good class right now. I wanted a fun pick. I even stated that it's just a fun pick for me. I could have picked any class. You know, in fact, Moonkin Druids, I would say, are a lot stronger than Shadow Priests, but I don't think any of these classes necessarily need a nerf right now in terms of, you know, Shadow Priests or Moonkins. I just think enhancement shamans and assassination rogues are a little bit overtuned, and that's why I mentioned it. But I also want to point out on this list, this is again 2400 and above, and there are no demon hunters here. A lot of people were crying out, and I'm going to make a video following this in a couple days, but in fact, statistically, there are no demon hunters on this top 15 list. Demon hunters are some of the lowest represented classes, and in a bracket of 2400 and above in any region, it does not matter if people do not like playing demon hunters, or a demon hunter is a class that people don't roll very often. It would still show up in this top 15 spec list, because anybody playing in this arena rating or above, I can even go to 2600 and above, you can still see that demon hunters are not on this list, because in fact demon hunters do not perform very well at higher ratings. They do well in tournament play, but on ladder play we just don't see them very often. You can also see enhancement shamans going right up to #3, and you can even see warriors obviously being paired with enhancement shamans taking the #2 spot. So it's very clear here if you just look at the stats. You know, I don't make these things up, but this is obviously a reason why we're seeing a lot of these class nerfs. And now, since we see these statistics and we see that frost mages are doing well, enhancement shamans are doing very well, assassination rogues are doing very well, fire mages are doing very well, moonkins could be on this list as well. It does make sense with a lot of the changes that we're going to be seeing today, or, you know, depending on when you're watching this video. All right, so after we've seen those statistics and we've seen the classes that, you know, that I did mention in the video, I wasn't making things up. Those classes were performing very well on the high-end arena ladder and had a big impact on the arena tournaments and all the other stuff and just the overall player base. So generally, we are seeing some general Azerite trait nerfs, which I think are, you know, decent nerfs. Azerite Veins has been nerfed, you know, just across the board, the amount of healing it's doing. and then the duration as well. People were stacking Azerite Veins, and I've seen some statistics, or just I've seen like some examples and some clips where Azerite Veins was healing more than some of the opponent healers in 2v2s and 3v3s. So obviously that needed to see a little bit of a reduction. I don't know if this number is a little bit overboard, but Azerite Veins have been nerfed, and we have seen a lot of the other healing Azerite traits nerfed in the past, like Fortification and things like that. Going into the Frost Mage nerfs now, obviously we saw Frost Mage was performing very well on the stats that we saw on Arena Mate, especially at higher ratings. So they nerfed Frigid Grasp, which is an Azerite trait. This was pretty strong. A lot of people were stacking this with Ice Form and just allowing people to do insane burst damage. We also see just the overall damage of Comet Storm being nerfed, and then Frostbolt damage increased by 15%. I really like this change quite a bit. I think this is a good change overall, nerfing the burst but increasing the consistent damage. The only thing here that I would have liked to have seen is just potentially a small reduction on the amount of snares. I feel like the snares are just absolutely insane, and I know, Frigid Grasp is still a big nerf, but maybe an increase, maybe a little bit higher on Frostbolt damage, and then just reduction in snares. I know Frost Mage is supposed to be the mage spec that kites very well and slows, and that's one of their forms of CC, but a lot of players are complaining about it just being too much. But I do like to see that they're increasing the Frostbolt damage overall, and hopefully that increases Frost Mage consistent damage. Now going on, strangely enough, we have Fire Mage nerfs. Well, it's not that strange because Fire Mages were very, very strong this past week. They reduced the amount of damage that your meteor does by 20%. I don't think the number is too insane. I've seen meteor like literally one-shot people in the opener, but I think it's an overall good change. And we also have Fireball damage increased by 15%, which is quite a bit, but Fireball is not really your main attack. They just nerfed the burst window with your meteor. I think this is a good change. I don't think this really hurts Fire Mages too much. Obviously their one-shot burst opener is going to be a little bit toned down, but they still got to keep their 5% buff that we saw the previous week or the other week in terms of their overall damage, and we're seeing a Fireball damage increase. So we're lowering the overall just burst potential, and we're increasing the consistent damage, and I think this is also a good change. Now moving on to Assassination Rogues, which we talked about, they nerfed their overall damage by 6%. This is kind of a large number. I don't know how this is going to affect Assassination Rogues overall, but that is kind of a big number. And they've also nerfed System Shock damage by 33%, which is also pretty big. I think this is a good change. I talked about, the double Envenom go where we saw they were using Mark for Death and getting 2 Envenoms off, when with System Shock it was dealing a lot of damage. But, toning that down plus the 6% might be a little bit too much, but Outlaw has not really gone anywhere. A lot of people were just playing Assassination Rogue over Outlaw because Assassination was just doing more damage. So now I think we're going to see a lot more rogues playing Outlaw. I would like to see some buffs to Subtlety as well. Maybe in the next couple weeks we'll see that, but Assassination was very strong and it was the top performing spec, at some points in the ladder. So we are seeing that change. And I think, overall, it's an acceptable change. Now moving on to Enhancement Shamans. Again, I don't make these changes. I know people were really mad that I mentioned Enhancement Shamans, but you guys, I was just going off the statistics that I saw. Once again, I play with an Enhancement Shaman. I'm a Mistweaver main, and enhancements and Mistweavers always go well together. It's just a class that I play with on my main 3v3 roster. So for me, it's kind of a bummer because I was riding the enhancement wave, but I was being honest and saying that they were too strong. So starting off here, we have an all damage reduction by 5% when engaged in combat with other players. Now, just the other week, we saw a 5% increase across the board. So this does nullify exactly the buff that they got for PvP. This is not for PvE. So if you're doing PvE and you're an enhancement, it's not going to affect you in any way, shape, or form. But they're just kind of bringing back the damage to what it was the previous week, which it was still very, very high. Now, the bigger changes, and which was the change I was talking about, was just the healing, the off healing by Enhancement Shamans. So we have a mana regeneration reduced by 30% when engaged in combat with other players. So this means they can't be spamming out heals as often. I think it's a good change. I think 30% might be, I'm not sure how high of a number that is. It might be too high, but all of the other hybrid classes have been nerfed in terms of their healing, except Ret Paladins, right? Druids were nerfed recently. If you do not remember, Druids were nerfed in their healing by 20%. So I think this is just to align all the hybrid specs with, Druids and maybe Ret Paladin. But Ret Paladin, that's one of their things. They don't deal the most damage. They have great bursts with things like Dark Arc, but we'll see if they change Ret Paladins as well. But this is a 30% mana regen nerf. We also have Healing Surge enhancement only, so this is nice for elementals. reduced by 33% when engaged in combat. So that is a third of your healing surge. It's going to be healing a third less. So I think the number, it's still going to be healing for a good amount. You just can't do it as often because of the mana nerf. And then Rolling Storm, your Azerite trait, which was responsible for a lot of the damage, now diminishes per stack in combat with enemy players, which was very similar to what we saw with Demon Hunters last week. Now, with that being said, let's go back to the arena statistics, correct? So we know what classes are getting changed, and I want to talk about how this might shift up the meta. So I'm looking right now in the Gladiator bracket, once again, 3v3, any region, any faction. So we obviously see Enhance, very high, and like we talked about, if I went to the 2600 bracket, we also saw Enhance at a much higher number in the third spot here with Warriors and Assassination Rogues. You can expect a lot of these classes to go down in the rankings. I still think Enhancement Shaman's still going to be very good. In my mind, this kind of returns them to maybe a little bit better spot than they were in Legion. They're still going to be dealing a lot of damage. Remember that 5% nerf isn't going to change much because they just got a 5% buff, so it kind of equalizes things. And we also see classes like Assassination Rogues. This will definitely dip down, especially if I go down to the Gladiator bracket once again. We're going to see a reduction in the amount of Assassination Rogues, I'm sure, and maybe an increase in Outlaw Mages, of course, are going to go down. I might expect Fire to come up a little bit more. How much does this hurt Frost Mages? I think it does hurt them a little bit, but Fire Mages can take that spot, and we're going to see maybe more of a setup based RMP versus like this Zerg RMP that we're seeing more recent because of all the damage that these mages are dealing, whether it be fire or frost. I also expect a lot of the classes that were on the lower end of the tier to go up in tiers, correct? So Moonkin Druids are probably going to start taking the spot of mages, and maybe in the future they might tone down Moonkin Druids, but Moonkin Druids are probably going to be looking very strong. Warriors didn't get many changes and they're still performing well, so they've been nerfed time after time after time after time again. So I think Warriors will start moving up in the ranks a little bit more, but maybe not as much because Enhancement Shamans were brought down a tiny bit. Also, we see classes like Feral Druids, they're going to be performing very well. We're going to see Rep Paladins, they're going to be performing just probably where they're at still, at a good spot. Survival Hunters might go up in the rankings because they're doing decently well. And with all these other classes being nerfed down, we can expect to see more Survival Hunters. Outlaw Rogues, obviously I talked about earlier, Outlaw Rogues will probably go up in the rankings because a lot of people weren't playing Outlaw just because of how well Assassination was doing. But now that Assassination has been brought down, we can expect that as well. Now, a lot of you guys were very upset about Demon Hunters, and how can Demon Hunters not be getting nerfed? They're super overpowered. But like I said, the statistics speak for themselves. But with these nerfs, then yes, I do expect to see more Demon Hunters on this list. I expect Demon Hunters to move up in the rankings because we are seeing a nerf in Rogues and Enhancement Shamans. And sometimes the way the game works is, you guys, if one class is doing really well or a few classes are doing very well, it kind of filters out the classes that aren't doing as well as those classes. So because Enhancement Shamans are doing so well at the moment, and because Assassination Rogues are doing so well, we didn't see as many Demon Hunters on the ladder, and Demon Hunters don't really have that many comps available to them. We do see them once again in tournament play with double Demon Hunter, and then of course Demon Hunter Moonkin. Now this is where I think Demon Hunters will start to move up the rankings because Moonkins didn't get nerfed, but we saw a lot of nerfs on these other classes, so we definitely can expect more Demon Hunters to be played because Moonkins subsequently will be doing better or are going to be in a better spot following these nerfs. So following that, I will make an update video on Demon Hunters, what I think are, the reasons why a lot of players dislike Demon Hunters at this current moment. I do have a Demon Hunter, but I'm a healer main, and I don't really enjoy playing my Demon Hunter at the moment, but I will make a follow-up video because a lot of people were kind of asking for that and complaining about Demon Hunters, and I expect a lot more people to be seeing Demon Hunters following these changes. Overall, I think the changes are okay. It does address a lot of the problems that many players, including myself, were kind of talking about, not complaining about, but talking about. You guys, we all want a balanced game, and if a class is overperforming, even if it's your class, you kind of have to accept the fact that it might get brought down to a more equal level to make the game better for everyone else that's playing. You have to keep that in mind, you guys. I don't hate any classes. I'm not responsible for these changes. If anything, you should kind of be mad at Blizzard for making some of these classes innately way too strong, because you don't want to get nerfed. No one likes getting nerfed, and I've always been a fan of not nerfing classes but buffing other classes, but that is not the route that Blizzard takes. They just like to nerf things, and if they're not going to buff the other classes, we have to complain about classes that are doing much better than everyone else. But with those changes, we can expect the game to be a little bit more level-headed. I expect more changes in the future. Once again, I'm just providing statistics. Please don't get all butthurt. I'm just letting you guys know what's doing well, and if you don't like hearing that, then just don't watch the video. But that's gonna do this video, you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to give the video a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, you can give it a thumbs down. If you have any more questions on these changes or anything like that, you can leave those in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Try not to miss me on my Twitch live stream where I answer all your guys' questions in depth. Do not forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.